lovelies, and welcome back to my channel. I know it's been forever, and it's been forever since I made a pagan parenting, raising pagan kids video, but here we are. If you would like to watch my Samhain videos from prior years that just talk about various rituals or the history, etc., I will have the links below. But let's get into it. So, funny thing, I've had this video planned to do today, and I just dropped my daughter off at her pre-K. And yesterday they went on a field trip where they went on like a hike, like a nature walk, is what they actually called it. And they were putting in her backpack, as they do at the end of every week, because the end of the week for her is Thursday, whatever things that they've made or whatever during that week. And there was a bag of leaves and pine cones and stuff like that and feathers. And I asked Freya, while I was dropping her off, what she was going to do with them. And she said, I'm going to make a Halloween altar just like Mama. And the TA looked at me like, what? And I just kind of like smirked and was like, okay, Freya, you already have a lot of pine cones, because she's collected pine cones since she was like a year and a half. And I'm like, but we can do that. And but I live in a very conservative type area. I no longer live in a big city, so I am very open about my beliefs, and I don't hide my eclectic style or anything like that. But at the same time, she's a child, so I'm trying to find that balance, because I don't want her to be kind of cut out. So yeah. Anyways, I just thought it was kind of cute that she said she was going to do an altar. Well, anyways, we can start with just the basics. So if you don't really want to get your children, no matter what age, really involved in the ritual aspect, or you personally don't like the trick-or-treat and what Samhain, now as Halloween, has become, and you don't really want to bring your children into that, you can have like a big family feast in which you can give thanks and honor your ancestors and others that you've loved that have gone away. Now, there's this really small book that I found, I think last year or the year before, that has various recipes and also includes different altar items, but you can use as more of like a family altar thing. It's called Nana's Witchling's Samhain edition, and it's basically just a small little book that gives you some various recipes, including drinks and different little celebrations that you can do with your family, that I highly recommend. And I think I mentioned it in a prior video, but I'm not sure. I will put the link for this book below. There's also many books that have to do with nature, with this relation to the season, that also could work during the Mabon time as well. That there's kind of that overlap, because that is the autumn equinox. That's really what we're going to be talking a lot about, like fall and things like that. But nonetheless, they can still carry over, obviously, into the Samhain time period. I have a bunch of them listed in my video from last year for pagan parenting for Mabon. I'll link that as well. But there's also books out there that you can easily find that are Samhain based, that can teach children, I would say, that are probably like later elementary age, that can understand things in a more logical sense, that teach them about like what the history and the meaning is. Though there are definitely ways that we can teach our younger ones. Even my daughter, who's 3, there are ways that I can tell her a little bit of the history from the Celtic perspective, as well as, honoring the ancestors aspect, and try and find ways to explain that the veil between this world and the other side is thinning, and our ability to contact and honor those ancestors and all those who have passed before is getting closer, and our abilities as people in the practice are stronger. And of course, the way that we say it depends on the age group. Now, the way I just said it might be better for like later elementary school, almost like middle school, but for her, I would probably do something more in the lines of course, you have to be okay with talking about essentially death, and that people cross over with your child. And I know a lot of people, if a dog dies, they still say, oh, they went to a farm, or they don't like to be honest about certain things like that. And that's totally understandable. And as somebody that's, a master's in counseling, I completely understand the mentality behind that type of thing. But for me, I feel like there's always a way to try and explain these things. And honestly, a lot of children, because they have yet to have their minds closed off a bit more, due to societal standards and etc., they are experiencing encounters with the fairies more often, with spirits. Many children are a lot more connected to nature and have interactions with spirits than adults. That's why when you hear a lot of these people's paranormal stories, they're either, a lot of them are about when they were kids, or if you watch like movies that are based in real life or something like that, a lot of the times it's the children and even adolescents who have these interactions more often than the actual parents seeing the actual spirits themselves. They might experience things, but they don't see them as much, or it takes longer for them to kind of experience it. So in my mind, explaining that the line between our world and that in which the people that are no longer with us is not that hard to do. I mean, when we think about it, Christians talk about like, oh, our loved ones are going to heaven. What is the difference between them saying heaven versus us saying that they're on a different side, or whatever you want to describe it, because I know everybody has their own variation. So explaining the history and the meaning behind Samhain, I think, can be done at any age. You just have to be smart about the way that you do it. Then there are books that are Halloween based, in which I feel are okay, that the pagans, and particularly from my experience, certain Wiccans have a problem with the way that witches are described and portrayed in various books and movies, and I understand that and I agree with that. Like, I love Hocus Pocus. Like, it's one of my favorite movies. I saw it in theaters when it came out. Yeah, I'm that old, but I was like 5. But like, obviously they're seen as like negative, and then when they go to like the devil's house when they're trick-or-treating, they're like, oh, dad, blah blah blah. And so yes, it is a negative depiction, but it's still a fun movie. But there are books now that don't even have any of those elements at all, that depict witches as good people. And with both Samhain-based books as well as Halloween-based books, they're very easily found. I mean, I can put some links below, but it's really, really easy to find it by just searching like pagan-friendly Halloween books or Samhain kids books. Easy to do. But for like the preschool to elementary school age, I do have some that I actually just got from, ironically, the Scholastic order thing, minus one book I just got because I just always thought it was really cute. And so the one that I got on my own was Room on the Broom. Yes, there's still, the drawing still has like the old hag look, but overall, the witch is a very overly friendly person who's just trying to allow more and more people to fit on her broom. And I think it's a lovely book for the children, younger children of pagans, of all backgrounds of pagans. For the fall aspect, which can work for Mabon or, you know, Samhain, or throughout this whole fall thing, I think is really cute is we're going on a leaf hunt. Just, it's really cute. It connects them into nature, wants to get them more interested in nature, all that. Then for, again, the young ones, because of counting, 10 busy broomsticks. And they're all really cute. They're depicted fine. They're just counting the witches, and in fact, the witches are running from monsters or helping each other get away from something scary and bad. So again, I feel like no matter what your beliefs are when it comes to Halloween, and the reason, even though I don't have a problem with it, I know there are some that do, this one is okay. Then there's 10 little pumpkins, where they count pumpkins. Of course, this can go from Samhain until, or Mabon until Samhain, because of harvest, and, you know, Samhain is the final harvest. But I think that one's cute. And then instead of the night before Christmas, which don't even get me, we'll get back to Christmas when it gets to Yule time. The night before Halloween, so it's a witch and her friends, who are different monsters, are trying to put together like this big feast and fun time and celebration party for all the kids, the trick-or-treaters, but because of what people teach them about them, they get scared and run away, and so they just end up having fun and a celebration all on their own. But I think it's still cute. So there again, you can easily, all of these have been on lists as well of various pagan websites that said that these were ones that would be acceptable too. Like I said, with books, you can easily find them. So let's move on to more of the activities and ritual aspects. So as we know, Samhain is technically our new year for the wheel of the year, and as pagans, and it, like I said, it is the third harvest. So kind of going back to teaching children in a more child understanding method of various aspects. You can talk about apples and other autumn crops. Now, yes, in my Mabon series and stuff, I talk a lot about like apple magic and all that kind of stuff, but apples are also a big symbolization for Samhain. So the giving of apples, was a very common thing in the original times of trick-or-treating. I don't know how often people actually still do it. I haven't seen it since I was a kid, anyone giving caramel apples or apples, but of course people still make caramel apples, people still do apple bobbing, all that kind of stuff is still put into today's Halloween activities. So by taking something that is portrayed to them for Halloween, you can then say, well, this is kind of the background of where that originated. Looking at my notes. So you can, of course, make like caramel apples with your kids. You can do bobbing for apples and all that kind of stuff. But talking about where it actually originated, because it didn't originate as a Halloween thing or trick-or-treat thing. So you can do the apple magic thing of like cutting in the 5-pointed star spell, which I have in my first Mabon video, but you can also talk about this and explain the history of bobbing for apples and all of that, with bringing in some stuff that I talked about in the Mabon videos prior. Because apples, for both Mabon and Samhain, but more so even Samhain, are a huge crop for that time, as well as pumpkins, obviously. And apples have strong ties throughout all the various pagan backgrounds throughout time. So depending on what your belief system is, you can always bring it back to that. And then, you know, Samhain, like I said, it's the new year, but it's also the thinning of the veil. So it's celebrating endings and death and transition from light to dark. So it's a time when the growing time, the manifestation time of the wheel of the year is going to an end and taking a rest for the winter. And so this is the time when we say goodbye and we look back at all the things that have come to us throughout this past year. As with Mabon, you give the gratitude for everything that's manifested and come from the seeds that were planted in the spring. Now we're closing that chapter and celebrating the end. It's not a time for sadness or being depressed that another year is over, or for all the things that have come and gone, but it is a time to celebrate and a time to release also anything that no longer serves us. So there is various different things you can do to celebrate not only the cycle of this year, but also the dead, as well as the cycle of life and your ancestral aspect. So you can have cakes and wine set out, of course, apple cider for the children, and have the dinner in a circle, and you can go back to this, which gives you a lot of ideas for it. You can also then bring in the aspect of divination. As with like my Samhain ritual kits that I make and sell, they're very focused on having the protection aspect as well as like divination and being able to connect over to the other side and contact whoever is needed. That is what the basis of all of the candles and everything I make. So this is the final aspect of Samhain. So since the veil between the worlds are thinning, this is a great time to try and connect, to find out about the future, to find out if we're on the right path, to connect to the spirits. You can have your kids with you and you can do tarot, you can do pendulums, you can do just even a basic ritual. With the older children, maybe like more of the adolescents, have even like a circle, and for lack of a better word, I'm going to say seance, but that's not what I mean right now. But just to be able to contact, but also make sure you're completely protected, because again, with the veil being even thinner, just as any other time you're doing any divination, whether it's even using a Ouija board, which of course is a controversial topic, but no matter what tool you're using, runes, etc., there's always room for something negative or uninvited to come in, and this is especially true for Samhain and as we get closer to Samhain and the couple days after, due to that thinning of the veil. So make sure everything is protected. I know I said in my first Samhain video 2 years ago, which again will be linked below, that there's this theory within the pagan community that not every pagan, I feel like I keep needing to verify that, but anyways, that whatever you dress up as, if you do go to a Halloween party or you do trick-or-treating or what have you, that whatever it is that you dress up as will put out the energy for that upcoming year. So like if you're something really dark and negative, that might be what comes to you. If you're like a cat, the representations and symbolization of what a cat is will be like the energy that comes forth to you. So when dressing up your kids, I know a lot of people still just will be like, well, my kid really wants to be this. But, it's not that big of a deal to also teach them that theory if it is something that you do believe in. I will say from my own experience, it's definitely come true. And that hasn't always been a good thing. But also, it can't be used as a way to connect and get closer to the gods and goddesses. But again, going back to the stereotypes of Halloween and what it's become, the way that witches are now portrayed, as I said, are like the more of this old hag, like taking this negative view of what the crone is. I mean, my daughter walks around, I had this, like my trick-or-treat basket when I was a kid was a cauldron, not the big pumpkin in various colors. I had the cauldron, and I didn't like when I'd get green makeup put on me because I didn't agree with that because I wanted to be a witch a lot. But I was fine with just wearing black lipstick and that's about it. I didn't want to be all, if I can find a picture of it, I will put it at the end. But I think it's at my mom's and I'm not at my mom's. But I have a cauldron and now Freya's walking around with it just all the time, and with her little wand. And she, I think, already understands that the stereotype that is put out there is not the actual stereotype, or that the way that witches actually are. But that's because I've taught her from such a young age. But if they do want to be witches, or if they do want to do things like that, there are ways to kind of go around it. So they could use the cauldron. They could still use the hat. They can still do all this kind of stuff, but they can add like crystals. They can add elements of fall. They can make, they can dress with like deer antlers and be like this forest witch, or there's so many different varieties besides just buying a bunch of green makeup, putting on a wart, and wearing a tattered outfit and looking like a... Let's not get into it. One of the things that can really be taught is the history behind jack-o'-lanterns and scarecrows. Of course, like scarecrows were to protect the crops. Jack-o'-lanterns were to protect the home and the harvest from any dark spirits or negative entities, etc., from coming into the home. Or that's at least part of it. It's much deeper than that. But I will put a link below of the history of jack-o'-lanterns, so that can be something that can be explained. I'm also going to be putting a link from Thought Co. Because they have a nice little family-friendly ritual that they have written out. If you don't feel like going and buying something like this, with honoring ancestors, you can, of course, put pictures on an altar or all around the house or on the kitchen table, along with pumpkins and various harvest items and other representations of Samhain and this season, and what you would normally put on an altar. But you can put pictures in frames. You can use items that were your great-grandparents. You can put jewelry, clocks, just items. Scarf. You could use a scarf that was theirs, or a tablecloth that was theirs, to bring in that element. And you can also make a family tree and talk to your children about your family and your family history. And this can be the time that you kind of start teaching them maybe every year a little more about the family as they age. Again, I will be putting the Thought Co. thing in there because they have a bunch of stuff similar to like what I already talked about, but then they do have an actual ritual written there. But like seasonal crafts, like drawing on, depending on the age, again, making it age appropriate. They can carve the pumpkins, they can paint pumpkins, they can make cookies related to the holiday. I know we've done that once already, and we're doing it again this weekend. And or painting pumpkins, because I feel like she's obviously too young to carve them. We're going to make some art with like pine cones and leaves and various other things. There's so many different crafts that you could do. You can even bring in the sugar skull if you want. Then there's also the aspect of what kind of activities can you do for fun as a family. If you obviously are doing your own ritual on your own, or with your coven if you're in a coven, but you don't think your children should be involved in a ritual aspect, hay rides, corn mazes, pumpkin patches, all that kind of stuff is great. Apple picking, just going out in nature. If they're a little older and want to go to haunts, that's great too. But again, keep in mind the thinning of the veil. So if you're going to a haunt that's actually at a place that's supposed to have a history of actually being haunted, because again, not all haunted houses during the holiday are set up at places that actually have a history of being haunted. But there are some people that set up their haunts at places that have a history of being haunted and are well known throughout the area for being haunted. So if you do go to those ones with like your adolescents, older children, make sure that you're wearing something like this, like onyx or something protective, because of the thinning of the veil. It's not anything to worry about, but yeah, hay rides, all that kind of stuff are great to do. Just really getting the energy of this time period and embracing it and connecting to your family, being grateful for your family, and learning about your history and trying to find ways to teach them while also learning about their family. So yeah, I'll put all these things in the links below. If you haven't yet, it would be great if you signed up for my newsletter, because even if I don't have time to be making my videos, because right now I am at the end of my master's in cleansing program, and I have my business, and then I'm a single mom, and then I'm doing my internships now, so I'm really, really busy. So if I don't have time, I still make my newsletters. I at least make sure to do them for every new moon, every full moon, every Sabbath, and then at the beginning of every month, I do an oracle or tarot card for each element. And then on my Facebook page for my business, I do one tarot card for everyone for that month. For October, it's actually death, which I found perfect. How that happened, I don't know, but it happened. Also, yeah, check out my business. I do have Samhain products for rituals, and you can get like the full kit, or you can get each thing separate. This is the first year that I'm actually selling the crystals that are in the kit by themselves as well, because I know some people just wanted those too. You can buy up until 2 days prior to Samhain. 3 days if you want to ensure that they're there, because you never know with the post office. But I always make everything the day of the order and then send out the next morning, so it will be out. I also have harvested all my sage, and I thought I'd have enough for 100, but I have enough for 200 smudge sticks. I have 3 different ones that I have up on my Etsy shop, but I have a few others that I make that are not, which of course, again, custom orders are always for my email, which is also where you can get tarot readings and other types of divination from me. So that's all I have for today. I love you all. Next time my energy will be higher. I'll be less exhausted. I hope that there was something helpful. Again, the links will be below. Check out my links. If you have not yet, please subscribe, hit the notification bell button, and have a great blood moon coming up next week, which is what my next newsletter is going to be. And a wonderful was going to say Sabbath. Wonderful Sabbath.